everybody, and welcome to the Worlds Chat here at the ZLTAC Australasian Championships for 2019. I have two guests with me from the Worlds Council. We have Darkomen, who's a member of GP, and also on the Worlds Council, and we have Doc, member of the Canberra Dragons. How are we going, gentlemen?
Good.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Love to be back in Australia.
Thank you, it's great to have you back. We're so stoked that you came back. It's awesome having you. I'm going to ask you a few more questions in a second, Darkomen, but I'm going to talk to Doc first. Doc, give us the background, mate. We want to know where this thing started and how it started.
Well, look, I guess you can go back as far as the guys in San Diego. They pushed to have a competition there which had some Swedish, Finnish, Canadians and various others. What was that? 2001 or something like 2002, something there. And then a conversation happened between myself and Tapio over in Finland. That conversation led some years later, 2009, so a big gap. And then I guess from there it just went nuts. Everybody wanted to dig in and play a game, and they wanted to play against the world's best. And of course, that's what we got.
Awesome. So we had the early pioneers in the early thousands, and then there was a bit of a break, and then we sort of kicked it off again in 2009 and
09, 14, it was 11, so 9, 11, 14 and 17. So what have we got? That's back into San Diego, then you've got Tampere, Finland.
Yep.
Then we went to Syracuse. From Syracuse, I think we went to Sunshine Coast, right where we're hosting right now, which is brilliant. Yep. And then, of course, we shot over to France, Belfort, and next year, Malaysia.
Awesome, and we're going to get to Malaysia very shortly. Can't wait to talk about that. But for those of us at home that don't know much about the difference between playing at the Worlds and playing on the Australasian format, Darko, I mean, what can you, as an experienced player, you've played in all the big comps in Europe and now in Australasia. How can you compare the two formats? How are they different?
Well, if we talk about the team comp, the format is game length is the same. We have reloads, but the big difference are we use 1 shot per second and stuns. Those are the bigger differences between Australasian and Worlds. Otherwise, we go with quite a lot with Australasian. So reloads are on 12-minute games, quite the same style of running the tournament. Happy. Good culture.
And do you feel that the differences are large, or that they're not insurmountable? So a team who's familiar with the Australasian format will be able to go over, play the World's format and be reasonably competitive. It's the same enough.
Absolutely, and I think Cobras back in 2017, Belfort, they came in and it was their first Worlds competition, and they came second. So absolutely, it's just you need to train and prepare yourself as you would for any competition. But because Worlds is a middle ground between European and Australasian settings, it's easy for anyone to just jump in.
Yeah, and I guess one of the great things about the game, that it's kind of like tennis in a way, where all the big four tennis tournaments in the world, they're either played on clay or hard court or grass, and they all have their differences. And one of the great things about the professional circuit in tennis is that they get to test themselves or challenge themselves on a different kind of environment, I guess, and that ZLTAC has got the kind of same dynamic going on.
And a vast mixture of cultures.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay, Malaysia. That's what everybody's talking about and what we want to hear about. What can you tell us about the Malaysian comp? When's it going to be?
June 26th to July 5th. I believe are the dates we've got down at the moment. So it's quite a good time frame per se. Nice period of the year to be in KL. Competition-wise, the guys that are over there on the site have really come a long way. Actually, they've got to a point where the Worlds Council is now advising them on base design. So they're making changes. They're quite literally listening to what we've got to say, and they want to get their players up to that level. So they're making base changes, maze changes. In fact, I think Dot, who's here as well from the US, is part of the crew, having that constant discussion. It's going to be big. 4 extra countries from what we've currently got 6 countries. So we're going to add to that. There'll be Singapore, Thai, German, and Malaysia, of course, a host. Yeah.
So these new countries that are entering, they've got a domestic scene already that is interested, or they are going to create one?
They have one. It's not as big as they would like it, but part of the World's Council remit is to promote and advertise at the same time as support. So we go in, we find a place that currently has a competition that wants to get better, we find out what they need, we give them as much information as possible to lift them to a level to play, and then of course course, if we host a World Championship there, like in 2017, hosted the World Championships in Belfort, France, and from that directly extended the brand new EU Championships. So Germany got involved. Now you have the Swedes, the Germans, the Finns, the French, all combined to make a great EU Championship, which is fantastic.
And Germany is growing like rapidly.
Is it?
Super fast.
Really fast.
Because they have other big laser scenes, and now they are all switching to zone because they've seen our scene and our international through Worlds and European, and they have loved it. So they're growing really fast, and there's a lot of good players coming up from Germany. So that's a team or a country to watch out in, like for next 5 years or something.
Yeah, well, we know how the Germans approach everything in the professional world. If they approach laser tag in the same way, they're going to be forced to reckon with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we've seen that model work so many times. I know in 2008 we got a group of Australian teams to go to New Zealand. The idea being exactly the same as what you guys have got in mind with the Worlds Council. We go and introduce a whole bunch of people that maybe haven't played professional laser tag before or tournament laser tag but are interested, and just show them that there's more than just what happens at their local site. There's actually a whole playing community. And from there, now we have New Zealand have competed at the Australasian Championships every year since then, and won Australasian Champs and Worlds, got second at Worlds. So that's the very logical first starting point for the Asian countries, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
And so in terms of team numbers and this kind of thing, have you guys got any ideas on how many teams we're going to be able to have from each country?
Well, that discussion's still going at the moment, but at the moment, most countries are allowed to bring up to 4 teams per country. If that happens and we have 10 countries going, that could be 40 teams, possibly. I don't think you'll see that because of restrictions on time, holidays, and the cost. I'm pegging somewhere around about 18 teams. I reckon it'll be about 18 teams that'll show up. We had 13 last time, so 18 is not too far a stretch.
And we're planning to do a Helios?
Definitely.
Helios?
Yep, it's on Helios.
Okay.
The Helios Pro.
Yep. Okay, and what about media? You guys got any thoughts or ideas about media at this early stage, or are we jumping the gun there? And
there is a media crew, and they have started already working, so it's going to be big.
Okay, awesome.
The host site themselves actually have a media team. Right. And they're pretty big on that. They're really pushing for that. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we've seen so many advantages out of it just in the couple of years that we've been working on it. So I think everybody, if only 3 or 4 teams from Australia and New Zealand can go, or 3 or 4 from Australia, 3 or 4 from New Zealand, then there's going to be so many people at home that are going to want to tune into it. So,
tap in. Do not miss that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you touched on it before, Doc, about the host site being very receptive to suggested changes.
Yeah, they really want to learn. They've opened themselves up to suggested changes to the maze. They're looking at the rules, so we're giving them a hand in some respects, like a guideline, a booklet that gives the basic strategies, that sort of thing, so that their local team players have something to build on. You'd rather go in and play with somebody on a level playing field than go into a new site that's never played, never practiced, hasn't had a chance basically of learning. So that's, again, part of our remit was to give as much information as possible. And they've just literally opened the doors and said, please give us as much, and we have. So,
because I think, as from a player's perspective, one of the questions they're going to have is, we're going to a site that hasn't got a tournament background. How do we know that this arena is going to be tournament ready?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we've got Dot, I think Danny as well, and a couple of the other guys. I know Big Pun from the US is also part of that same team in designing their maze. So they're going to shoot into designs. They've already started talking about that. That's on a constant chit chat between the two. And that design will change time and time again until the council comes to a conclusion to say, that's the maze design we want. And these guys, to change an entire maze to suit other countries coming, it's not a small thing, as you know. Well, you've had a site before, you've got a site yourself. Changing those plans and designs just doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to do. So, we are massively open to that idea, and they just grabbed it and ran with it. So.
Great, that's really important, I think.
Well, the maze they get when it comes will be to a standard of Worlds. So they'll have that to play with forever. As long as they want to stay to that design, obviously.
And some of the challenges we've had in the past, especially in the earlier years when we've got so many playing cultures, so many different sets of rules, so many different interpretations of the rules, you bring all that together into a tournament and you've got to try and figure something out which is consistent and everyone understands and can ref by. Is there anything that the Worlds Council have sort of got in the got in mind in order to sort of close that gap for this coming Worlds?
Yeah, there is actually a big work on the rulebook now, and it's gonna be a little bit like a compromise between Australasian and European and American rules, but we have it open in the committee so everyone has their saying, and everyone, all of the committee members can go back to their side and their players ask that, how does this look, how do you like it, what do you want to change, and then they come back and then we modify it from there. But I think it's more of a legend that there are like big differences. It's quite the same, like as you mentioned, I played here, I played in US Nationals, in European, and at Worlds. And Worlds is a middle ground. Like covering rules are more or less the same. Wall hugging or paneling, as you call it, it's the same. It's okay for you guys. So that's different from European. We don't have paneling, but for you guys it's the same. You have paneling, and basic rules with basic gameplay is the same. I think it's just more of a information, like the media teams and our committee members' duty to get it out, like information out to them. Yeah, communicate that it is more or less the same. It's not a big difference in the rules either. So.
Yeah, and that I think that initial refs meeting at the start of the tournament is such an important gathering to just answer any questions and clear up individual interpretations of spots in the arena and how they need to be reffed and things like that.
Part of what we've done towards fixing that exact problem is to remove the game formats directly from the actual booklet. So all the governance documents have been made, so we have a governance document now as to how we run things. The games themselves, the formats, have been removed from the booklet. So now we're left with just the rules by themselves. So game formats are pretty understandable. You know how many shots a second you're going to fire, that sort of thing. They're done. But when it comes to the rules, part of what Darkomen's been doing in the background is to start getting those things with recognisable symbols, for argument's sake. So we're working towards it. Might not be complete, and as a living document with different cultures, it's going to change as we go on. New people will come in with better ideas, and that's what we really want. More ideas, more involvement, more people coming in, better communications, just so we can communicate more clearly.
Yep. Cool. I'm going to ask you some more questions about how we can get involved in a second. But before we do that, you mentioned formats. I need to ask what formats we're going to be playing.
Definitely the 5-man. That's in there.
So we're gonna have team comp main event. Then we're gonna have triples. That's run as your doubles here. Team Elim is gonna be one. Solo is gonna be one, and Lord of the Rings is gonna be one.
Right. And Team Elim, for us in Australia, we don't play a lot of Elim. Do we play it? There's so many different ways we can play it. Is it going to be 4 teams in the arena, 8 teams in the arena? Do we know any of those details yet, or maybe a bit early?
Check your local game booklet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I believe that's up for discussion, but as it stands now, it's going to be four teams in the arena, 5-man teams. So you have the same team size as in Team Comp. 4 teams inside the arena. You can start with it wherever you want, and then you go from there.
Okay, cool. And the question that everybody wants to know: ball hugging.
It's allowed.
It's allowed.
Ball hugging is allowed.
It's
Yeah,
allowed.
it is allowed. Yeah.
You didn't ask one serious question.
What's that?
The finals format. That's changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Please expand on that, Doc.
Let's go right back to the start. Way back in the start, it was the bottom teams would drop out. We build our way up to the top 3 teams.
The old standard ascension.
The old standard ascension.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we moved to a different skip ascension and various other versions of it. A vote was held last year, and we now have a modified System D.
Yep.
So essentially, the top team, at the end of the week, will go straight through, and the other teams will play up to the last 2 spots.
Wow, awesome.
So,
That's awesome news.
modified System D. It's a good system.
It is, and I can't wait to see it, because the idea is that if you have played the complete week and you're number 1 after all the cascades, everything, you've done your job.
Yeah.
So then you're in
That
final.
was the one thing that I liked about the old system. I felt like the top team deserved that right to go into the grand final.
Yeah.
We spent some time getting
So
that
you
right.
guys have kind of combined the two, so it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I guess with all these new teams coming in from new countries, is there idea of having a cascade being thrown around?
Still looking at it. Still looking at it.
Sorry, which cascade?
A cascade. So
Cascade
it'll give,
ending.
if presumably these new countries that are competing will, they're going to be a lot less experienced than some of the top teams playing. The idea of having a cascade would mean that they would have a round of games where they can play teams around them on the ladder.
Yeah,
essentially.
we're planning on cascade. Yeah, we're planning on.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. All right, so Doc, we want to get involved in Worlds. How do we get involved in Worlds?
Easiest way is send an email. Just get in contact with us straight up. So if you're an Australian and you want to get involved, contact either myself or Gizmo. We've got bits of paper over there with our email addresses and so on. You can get us on the forums. You can get us on Facebook. You can I believe we also have a website coming soon. It's been approved. The website's there. That'll go up. That'll have contact numbers and email addresses on it as well. I'm hoping as many Australians will get involved as possible because we've got a lot to do. There's so many things to work out here. Who's going? Who's deciding who's going?
Yeah.
All those questions have to be answered.
So if I start asking questions about team selection right now, am I jumping the gun a little bit?
I don't think so. I think at the moment there'll be a lot of questions around that. I think self-formed teams will probably be a starting point, as it has been in the past. Let's be honest about it. At the moment, it's a lot of who can afford to go, time and money, and personal. You've got a lot of things to consider. You've got this competition. Next year, we're going to Darwin for the Australasian Championships, and then 6 months later, or less than 6 months later, we have Worlds in Malaysia. So, can you afford to go to both?
Yeah.
So that question is going to have to be asked by a lot of people. If they can afford to go to both, brilliant. Go to both.
And I think a system we've used in the past has been, self-formed teams, and then we put a third-party group together to approve the teams. Essentially, a group of people that aren't going, basically give the tick of approval to the teams to say, they're a good representation of Australia, and they're gonna,
These are the
tick all the
guidelines that
boxes.
need to be put on paper and put in place properly, like we have with the Australasian Championships. Other countries have got their own way of doing it. Council has decided that each country will have their own decision-making process. Once that's done, they present the teams come through. Now, we might have to put it down. The council hasn't come up with a complete system yet. It might be a round of invitations. So the first round goes out for 2 teams per country. Everybody sends in. If we've got more space after that, like I said, if we have 10 countries and 40 teams coming, it's going to be a hell.
Absolutely.
Absolutely hell on earth to play that.
I was just reading the chat to see if we had any questions coming in. We've got one question which I think we've answered. Will there be a cut-off for number of teams?
At the moment 4, but we'll see.
4 per country, potentially 18 for the tournament. We're throwing around.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just before we finish up, I want to ask you both a question before we finish up. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask about the World's Council and if there's anybody interested in helping out with the organisation, whether jumping on the council or helping out in other ways. Is there opportunities for players or enthusiasts to do that?
We have volunteers. We certainly do. ZLTAC's here, in fact. He's one of the volunteers. Kincaid, he's put his name down to help.
Absolutely. There is so much to do, and especially for Australians that are listening in, you have such a big history in the scene. You know a lot. You have seen a lot of different tournaments, so you have a lot of knowledge you can share.
Need to utilize that.
So the more the merrier in this situation.
For sure.
All the help we can get, we want.
Wonderful. And with the World's Council, give us just a little bit of background on how many countries are represented and how the World's Council makes their decisions on things.
Yeah, right now we have 6 countries represented in the World's Council, and it usually is up to a vote. So whatever we need to decide, you have is it 2 weeks time to read it and give another modify. Let's say it's a rule. So you have 2 weeks time to react to that and give your explanation or your modification, and then it goes down to a vote. And we don't have any veto votes or something. It's just a democratic process, and we go from there.
Yeah. And for new countries that are coming onto the scene, how do we decide which countries get to sit on the council?
Well, that's a tough one. At the moment, the countries that have control over the council have ongoing competitions going. So the EU, Sweden, Finland, and so forth will have that. As it progresses, the council itself will have to have a closer look at it. So as a country comes in, if it can produce, for argument's sake, if they've got a massive scene, a large competition always happening, then they've got many people, like the Australian comp, Finnish, Sweden, US, and so on. Their competitions have risen to a point where they need that representation. If you've got a country that wants to come in and, say, host a Worlds, but it doesn't have the player base yet, to actually have that representation, and it doesn't have the experience, it's a bit hard to have that without the background, as it were. So there's more and more of that to be, as I said, talked about and discussed. But
And it's a work in progress, isn't it? I mean,
Always it's a complete living document. The whole thing is a living thing.
Yep.
It's always changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So we have another question on the chat. Let's have a look here. With a limit of 4 per country, assuming there will be a few countries who don't utilise their full allotment, will additional spots be offered to countries willing to send a 5th or 6th team? Good question from Aldor. No, that's from Minty in New
Minty.
Zealand.
Right. Again, depends. At the moment, the discussion hasn't been finalised on rounds or invites. At the moment, it's not finished.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of work in progress, but
Yeah, in the past it has been like filled out to a point that the tournament makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
So if we get a perfect round robin, then we take the teams we need to make it a perfect round robin.
I will always go for a perfect round before anything else. If it happens that way. If you end up with a perfect number, then great.
cool. We're going to take one more question off the chat. Ordur's asked if there are any new countries looking to join the scene. So yeah, we mentioned earlier in the chat, Ordur, that we're going to have Germany, is it Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. Probably coming along, which is really exciting. So, now, just before we finish up, I wanted to ask both of you this question. What is the future of Worlds? What do you guys see, perhaps, maybe when we're talking about Worlds in 10, 15, 20 years' time, what do you feel like Worlds is going to look like at that point, once we've been through this process a few times?
Great question.
You want to start?
Do I want to start? I don't know if it'll be alive in 15 years.
No, my view is that it would be the biggest tournament or most prestigeful. So we would actually get, hopefully through sponsor money or something, we would get like every country's champion. So if you win Australasian Championship, you would get to go to Worlds. If you win European Championship, you would get to go to Worlds. And in that way, we would get the best of everyone, and it would actually be like the best of the best, every time.
I was born 20 years too early, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's throw it out one more level then. Let's go one more step.
Yeah.
Olympics. Why not?
All right.
Why
Okay.
not? Can be. There's a bunch of you people out there that can make this happen.
Yep.
I guarantee it. There's people out there that have the knowledge, the skill sets required to make that happen. If they want to come on board and take over, please.
And one of the beauties now is that we've got so many players that have come through and are now turning into administrators. We've got a lot of experienced people in the community that can actually make the things happen. Look at this tournament is a great example in terms of 50 volunteers, and a lot of them have got more than a few years' experience. So.
And even in the background, we've had the discussions here locally. Those 2 quick discussions we've had, and the discussions there have been coaches, captains, selectors. All those subjects have come up, so it's already progressing to that level.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we've got to wrap up, gentlemen. It's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that information about the Worlds. Good luck on the council and with all the organisation that needs to happen. If you are playing at the tournament, there I saw the slips up on the counter with the contact details for the Worlds Council if you need to contact them or want to contact them to express your interest in going. Awesome, gentlemen. Good luck in the rest of the competition.
Thank you.
And
See you too.
I'll see you at Worlds.
Thanks, mate.
See you.
Cheers.